Hello, everyone. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. Bigger crowd than I thought. I'd just like to thank everyone, and I'm just so glad to be here speaking right now. In 2006, something that I've been waiting for and wanting for what felt like forever finally happened. That was the year that my sister went to college. I'm sure some of you know how that feels. Just kidding, though. That wasn't the thing I'd been waiting for. That was the year that my family finally got a dog. I remember thinking of some possible name choices for my chocolate lab. We were thinking Cadbury, Hershey, Nestle, Godiva. I can see some of you thinking of some clever name choices. I know, thanks. But we settled for Nestle. I knew that when we brought Nestle home, we would have to make some changes in our lives. But there was one change that I didn't anticipate at all. I remember reading a lot of books about dog training and watching a lot of shows like It's Me or the Dog and The Dog Whisperer. And all of those books and shows seem to have one common point, that we have to assert our role as the master, the pack leader, the boss, right from the start. And that seemed to make sense. It makes perfect sense, right? It made perfect sense until we actually brought her home. I found myself attending to her every little need. She was always begging for attention, and we always had to play with her all the time. Not that I'm complaining, that was fun. I always had to make sure she had clean water. I took her out for walks all the time. And my personal favorite was cleaning up after her business. And she's a big dog. By no means is cleaning up after her business a small job. Anyway, my point is, it was then that I realized, there she was, getting every little need of hers attended to without ever having to lift a paw, just like the countless other pets in homes around the world. While we, the people, deceived ourselves with these fancy titles like master. Master? Me? It didn't really seem to fit. It was then that I realized that no one can actually call themselves the master of any dog, or any pet for that matter. And after I thought about some other relationships in my life, I realized that I never was, am not, and never will be the master of anyone. Thinking about this a little further, I realized this is true of everyone else. I mean, for example, parents serve their children, obviously, but we all know that children serve their parents as well, along with their siblings and their friends. And take heads of big corporations, for example. Even though it may seem they're just taking all the benefits from their employees, they're actually serving their employees as well, just like the presidents of entire nations are serving their citizens. The point I'm trying to make is, no matter who we are, where we're from, what qualifications we possess, and how we view ourselves in comparison to others, our position will always be one of service. And in fact, as we grow older and gain more authority and experience and respect, our capacity to serve others increases. Isn't she a cute dog? That's how she gets to you. Anyway, I'd like to share with you another story. I like stories. My family and I were walking by the Charles River in Boston, and we saw a large gaggle of geese just sitting there in the river, snoozing contentedly. Except one thing was a little strange. They were all sitting in such weird contorted positions. Their heads were turned completely backwards. Their bills were tucked under their wing pits. They looked uncomfortable, but I guess they were fine with it. One thing was apparent, though. The directions they were facing, they were all facing different directions. And together, the whole gaggle would be able to see the whole world around them. Also, I noticed that every once in a while, one of the geese would just open its eyes and take a peek at the world that was right in front of it. And this happened completely randomly. I also noticed that after it shut its eyes, another goose would open its eyes and take a peek at the world in front of it, just to make sure that everything was going okay. And like I said, this happened completely randomly with no order or any rhyme or reason. But then, one of the geese opened its eyes and it saw a threat. Just go with the alligator. It works for my animation. Once it saw the threat, it started stirring and honking like crazy. And then all of the other geese were notified of the threat, and then they all gathered together and flew off to safety. What I saw with the geese, it was simple, yet it was powerful as well. They didn't demand anything from one another. They didn't impose that everyone tuck their bill into the same wing pits or pressure everyone to face the same direction. They accepted the rest as they were. And essentially, their uniqueness and diversity guaranteed the safety of the gaggle. What I'm trying to say here is that we, as people, need to learn how to accept and leverage our diversity as well, just like the geese did. I see people from like 16 different countries in this room right now, and I don't see anyone punching one another in the face. Don't look in that corner. That might contradict something I'm saying. Anyway, we've already learned to accept our diversity, considering people from all these countries are in this room together. But what we need to do, like the geese did, is leverage that diversity and use our uniqueness to our advantage. Now, I want all of you to imagine that there's a large pond in the middle of the stage, and I ask you, ma'am, to throw a pebble in. What do we see? There's a little splash and some concentric circles expanding out, ripples. It's nice and peaceful and calm. And then let's say I ask you, sir, to throw a pebble in. What do we see? Same thing. Another splash and some more concentric circles expanding out. This is also peaceful and calm, up until the point where the concentric circles from each of the splashes intersect. Then we have a clash. Now, all of you, throw a pebble. This is pure chaos. Clashes everywhere. But what would happen if I asked all of you to throw a pebble into the same place? Something good happens. A little splash in the center, and then more concentric circles expanding out. Except this time, the ripples amplify one another in a natural way. Similarly, we as people have our individuality. What would happen if we preserve that individuality, but we repose it into a common place, just like that? Something to a similar effect, right? All of our efforts would amplify one another. I want to use a little example from my train ride from Boston to here in New York. I promise this is my last story. After that, I'll leave. So there were these two ladies having a conversation. It's important that you know that they were talking loudly because I wasn't eavesdropping or anything. One of the ladies said that she was part of a commune in Boston. It was a vegan commune, and it had recently fallen apart, and now she was going to move to a yoga center in New York. Maybe I was listening a little harder because it fit in so well. But anyway, my point is, to go back to my metaphor, what I gathered was that all of the people in the commune had their pebbles thrown in that same common center. However, it Sorry. However, later they all started to argue with one another about what that common center was. And then they all started having clashes with one another, and their commune fell apart. It happens all the time. We agree and then disagree, which is why we all need to find the right common center, not an artificial one, because otherwise we'll just have a clash. I'm not going to tell you what that common center is, because to be honest, I don't really know either. I have some ideas about what it means to me, but I think it's one of those things that we all have to think about for ourselves. In conclusion, if we all find that common center, and we all learn to leverage our diversity like the geese did, and we learn that our position is always one of service, just like Nestle taught me, then I think we'll all have what we're hankering for: peace. By the way, if you do figure out what that common center is, just let me know. I'd be glad to know. Thanks.